Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Thursday, which means it's time for a new FL Studio 12 Basics tutorial. Today is going to be about the channel rack. Veteran users of FL probably have no idea what I just said, and really what this is about is what we all understand to be the sequencer, which is apparently called the channel rack now, which actually makes sense because this is where the channels go. It's referred to as a sequencer because, along with this being where everything lives, when you add new plugins, new samples, new sounds, new whatever, this is also where you can sequence them. But the default, like if you never changed anything about FL and you open it up, this is what you're going to see when you look at the sequencer. It's opened up with this button here, still referred to as the channel rack. Interesting term. I mean, it's very straightforward, the idea of the sequencer. And actually, let me talk to you. This is fun. When I first looked at FL Studio, well, Fruity Loops 3, which was still called back then. The person who showed me how to use it opened up the sequencer and just told me, look, you have this out, you have your sounds, and you put down the notes like this, and then you hit the go button. And that's how you make a sequence. And that was pretty much all the information he gave me, and that was enough to sort of get me to understand sort of how the sequencer behaves. Because it is really very straightforward. By default, this is representing a 4/4, a measure of 4/4, so 4 beats of quarter notes is what this is. And you can use this to do pretty basic sequencey type stuff. What's new with FL12 in terms of how this works is that we're not purely limited to the sequencer view anymore. This button here, which kind of looks like a rack of shotgun shells, click on it, transforms it into a piano roll view, which we're not actually able to manipulate, like directly from here. But if we click on it, we're given the view inside the piano roll, where we can actually put notes around and change things kind of as we see fit. And then, of course, we can actually switch back and forth between either view. In fact, we can have one view open and the other view open and actually keep using them both at the same time. Notice that when I put down a note, it puts a note in there, and then when I delete it, it mutes the note that was in there. In the beginning, there's nothing there, but then when you fill it up, and if I delete all of it, it actually just is muting the piano roll note that represents the sequencer note that was there originally. In the olden days, what you would have to do in order to have this functionality is that you would have to actually send it to the piano roll, where it would recreate the sequencer data with piano roll notes. This is basically the same idea, only now we actually have both views to work with. It's kind of an interesting functionality that I kind of enjoy. There's this big old swing knob right here, which does this. It adds particular weighting to every other 16th note, specifically the even numbered ones, which makes it gives it that kind of that swing as opposed to being fully even notes to some swing. That's what the swing does. Up here we have where we would have groups. By default, everything is in the unsorted group. If you would like to group something, you select things and then you turn it into a group. How do you select things? Selecting things is done by clicking on these lights up here. When you're clicking on a thing, it'll open up the channel that it represents, which these are all sampler channels. And that's what a sampler channel looks like. We'll do a whole thing on channels, don't worry about that. And then these lights are here. You can click and drag, and it'll link multiple lights. You can right-click to deselect lights. You can double-click to select all of the lights, and then click again to single out a single one. Once you have them selected, you're able to do you can actually, do some stuff with that. If you click the down arrow here, you actually have a whole bunch of options. One of them, of course, being group selected. Note that most of these have keyboard shortcuts. For example, grouping is Alt-G. Alt-G, not Control-G. And then you can name it. Let's call this drums. So now I have a drums group. I don't have any other channel. Let's actually add a channel. Let's add a harmor. Now, because I'm in drums, when I added the harmor, it added the harmor inside the drums thing. But I don't want it to be in the drums. I want it to be in synths. We don't really have a synth category, so what you do is you select it, select a harmor, Alt-G, and then you can name your group, and it'll move it into the group. What if I want to move something into a group that already exists? Like, say, for example, harmor was a drum. You click the Alt-G, and you type in the name of the groups that you're going to send it into, and if it's already there, it'll already put it in there. And there you go for that. That's how you move groups around. There's a bunch of other options in here, including clone and delete. There's move up and move down. There's group selected that we just said. There's color selected, so you can color things. The gradient option is for when you select multiple things, and you pick a gradient. So I guess this is the first color. This is the second color, and it'll color them from top to bottom, like so. That used to be a thing you had to do manually, if you ever wanted to do that. But that's how you do that, in case you ever wanted to. It's kind of a fun thing to do visually. I kind of enjoy it sometimes. You can, of course, color things individually by right-clicking on a channel, but this gradient stuff is done by selecting these particular things here. Then we have zip and unzip. Zipping is where we collapse particular channels to being these here. This is kind of to save space. And then if you unzip it, we'll get unzip all, that kind of thing, then you get them back there. So it's kind of a organization related thing. It's not something I use a huge amount, but I have found it to be useful in the past. Now, down here we have an add button. There's also an add up here. There's like 17 ways to add stuff here now. You can click this button up here. You can click this button right here. You can click that button right there. You can go to the plugin database manually. You can click this button right here, add button. This menu and that menu are pretty much the same. I mean, by pretty much, I mean they are, in fact, identical. This is the plugin picker. And then you can also middle click up an empty expanse, and you also get the plugin picker. And then whenever you select something, it will be added as a channel in the group that you have selected. What's up, Ogun? Over here we have volume and panning for each individual thing, plus an activation button. If you right click it, you can say solo, and it'll solo that one particular element. If you solo it again, it'll unsolo everything. Hilariously, this parameter can be automated. So that's that. This button triggers the pattern and pauses it whenever you have it going on. And when you want to play a pattern with the actual main play button, you have to make sure that you have it set to be in pattern mode. Pattern mode is when it's lit up like this, and song mode is when it's lit up like that. We'll talk about the difference between the two when we actually get to the playlist part of this series, which will be coming soon. You can grab this and you can resize it, because in the olden days you have to actually specify how many beats and how many sections you wanted to show, because right now it's still showing just the 4 beats. The second I add in a new part, though, it puts in a whole new measure, and it'll play through the whole thing, just like you're playing through the one main thing there. And of course, you can resize it, and even if you have other things here, you can resize it, and then you can just scroll through. You can also resize it vertically and scroll up and down through there, which you might not think you need to do when it's this short, but when you have like 60 of these things, like 60 channels, then you're gonna scroll quite a lot. All right, what else is important? So if you wanted to change how many beats, how many pieces, like 16th notes there are, how many beats there are, the time signature, that whole thing, there is actually a way to do that. And the way that you do that is you go to Options, General File Settings, not File Settings, Project Settings. Here we go. And we have beats per bar and steps per beat. Now these are not terms that are based on music theory so much as they are based on how sequencers operate. These are referred to as steps. These individual lights are referred to as steps. These are sequencer steps. And so when it says beats per bar, that's a musical term right there. So that's how many like pulses there are per measure. So right now it's 4 beats. I could put it up to 5 beats, and now we have a measure of 5/4. I could put it up to 6, and then we have a measure of 6/4, that kind of thing. And say you wanted to do 6/8. Well, the way we think about this is that right now these are 16th notes that we have selected here. But if we make the steps to beats down to 2, these actually still play as one whole bar. Each beat, instead of being a 16th note, is now an 8th note. So that actually means that if we up this to 3 and brought this down to 2, this is 6/8. Could also do 6/12 as such. I personally don't do a huge amount of messing around with the time signatures with this particular method. In the piano roll, there's similar options, which we'll talk about when we get to the piano roll mode. And the playlist, I usually tend, if I am going to go into a different time signature, I usually just make Like so right now we're on 4/4. If I want to do 3/4, then I would just make the pattern only 3 beats long. And you can do that. We'll talk about that when we get to the playlist. But if you're dead set about making the actual grid represent the time signature that you want to be in, this is where you make a change. But you can also do stuff that has nothing to do with regular time signatures or anything like that. For example, we can make 5/16 notes per beat, and that just doesn't make any sense at all. Quintuplet, that's what that is. Yeah, that's kind of what just happened there. So experiment with that, and it can be kind of fun, and it'll change how many steps you have per beat and how many beats there are per measure. Steps per beat, beats per measure. Bar being a measure in this case. So that's a lot of fun with that. Beyond that, the channel rack / sequencer is not really that complicated. It's the stuff that you can do with it that does become kind of complicated. And all of those individual ideas, like what channels are, what the piano roll is, how you add stuff and add third-party plugins to get in there, those are all going to be separate videos. In fact, there's already one I did on the third-party plugin, but I'm going to do that again because there's more information that I didn't cover in that video. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day. And also remember to like, favorite, and subscribe, comment. Not favorite, although I guess favorite, part of that, just do that stuff. Do the stuff. Stuff is good. I like the stuff. It makes me happy, and it makes you a cool dude. Because if you do the stuff, then you're a cool dude. Peer pressure. That's what's up.